the most effective way that I could, for me, to get in front of the right people. 90% of our sponsorships were closed this way is through Instagram DMs. Arguably the biggest influencer in that space. So when we would reach out to them, they would shoot it right up. There was purpose behind everything that we did, but if we just dumped all the stuff on Instagram, like, we would not be able to monetize YouTube. I blame, like, you know, the Gary V's of the world that have conditioned us to think like it's all about the number of posts we put out, which, like, there's merit in that. But people have over-indexed on like, hey, I need to be in front of people all the time, but they have no idea what the actual piece of content, like what the purpose behind it is. Like, what am I trying to achieve with this thing other than just being in your face so you remember who I am?
Today, we have Todd Klauser on the show, who I am a big fan of. I've been following his content for a long time. He is the self-proclaimed worst marketer in the world and is currently the head of audience marketing at Audience Plus. And he's just coming off of a really cool event that I've got all the FOMO because I wasn't able to attend. Welcome to the show, man. I'm so glad you're here.
Thanks for having me.
I'm just going to jump right in because I have this one very specific question, because I was doing some research on you this morning in preparation for the show. And you started out, at least from what I was able to see, in a very non-tech, non-sexy realm of marketing, like doing lots of like welding stuff and manufacturing stuff. And I'm curious how much of that plays into the stuff that you do now.
Yeah, so I was in the welding and manufacturing industry, but it's interesting because, like, what you said is the impression that everybody has when I say, like, yeah, I came from the welding and manufacturing industry. You know, we kind of think of that industry as, like, you know, old school, like, you know, doing like all the old stuff that we were doing like 15 years ago. But I was lucky enough to be at a company that allowed me in 2011 originally I was an SDR. I did that for 6 months. I was like, hey, I suck at this. It's not working. Let me make a YouTube channel. And this was in 2011. Like, nobody was doing YouTube. Like, the only thing on YouTube from a company standpoint was like product demo videos that they would embed on their website. So luckily, I had a CEO was like, that sounds interesting. Like, yeah, do that. So, long story short, that ended up into building out this full YouTube program. Did that for 10 years, built a 500K ARR just content engine from sponsorship dollars on that. 9 million views a month. Tons of different channels. So definitely was in an unsexy industry, but I was able to learn a ton in that industry because we were so far ahead of anything anyone was doing. And we were able, because we started this in 2011, we were able to be on the front lines of every social media platform, like in its heyday, including Facebook and Instagram and TikTok for a short while there before I left. But then the goal was to, you know, I got sick of kind of like the long hours and editing video till 2 a.m. So I essentially pitched like, hey, I want to bring what I've learned over here from like the audience building side into B2B SaaS. And that's what we did. So
when I'm trying to, because you talk a lot about making your content fun, don't just do the legal professional version of marketing. Don't just talk about how great you are and everything. Were you exploring that stuff back then, or was it like just kind of like a glory day to where like any kind of consistent content on a semi-regular basis was going to get really good growth and reach? How'd you make it fun?
Yeah, so a couple things. One, I say we were in like the heyday of all these platforms. I don't think YouTube long form ever really had a heyday to where like long form organic YouTube reach was just easy to get. Like it took us 5 years to get to 50,000 subscribers. And then we basically started doubling every year after that. But to answer your question about like making content fun, and it's not so much about making it fun. That's one way to do it, but the what we're trying to accomplish with any content is make it interesting for the person to continue to watch it and make it memorable so they remember you after they finish watching it. So if the best way to do that is just share a new idea in a, you know, non-fun, I guess, like talking head sort of manner, but it's so mind-blowing that nobody's ever heard it before, and that's what makes it memorable. That's one thing. But like when you're talking about things, in my old YouTube days, it was like welding education. Like these things have been around forever. So like how do you make that interesting? And with our content, it wasn't always fun. Like a lot of it was just like straight up how-to content. The thing that differentiated us in that space was we were very unique in the sense that a lot of people in that industry had a very difficult time filming what was happening like underneath that weld arc. It's super bright, like you got to wear a welding hood to see it. It's very difficult to film that. To see what the welder sees through like a camera is very difficult. We figured it out, and like that helped us blow up because like now we could teach to exactly what you're seeing, not explaining something after it had happened. So like that's one way that we made it super interesting because people, and not only could we show it, but we could blow it up to where it filled the entire screen. It's not this big. So that's one thing. But then like later on, we also started playing around because by the time I left there, we had filmed over 1,000 videos. Like it was we had and long form videos. Usually they were anywhere from like 8 to 20 minutes. So it wasn't just like 1 minute videos. Um, so like we started testing around like different ways of delivering the same message. So like at one point, we did like a 90s like as seen on TV like infomercial style like blooper commercial where it's like, oh no, you know the one, like everything's falling out of like the Tupperware's falling out of the cabinets and stuff like that type of thing. We tested out like more storytelling. So instead of just like, and I'm speaking in a welding context here, but like we would have like a good, better, best weld scenario, and like we kind of told the audience a story that went along with it. That was like, all right, if you want to get paid $15 an hour, like here's how you do it. But you don't want to get paid $15 an hour. So if you want to get paid $50 an hour, here's how you do it. And like if you want to, be and we told this whole long story that went from like good, better to best. And that like just the storytelling we had created that content dozens of times in different ways like over the past several years. But when we released that piece of content, it was one of our best performing pieces of content because of the storytelling element of it. And I don't know what the number's at today, but when we released it, it got like 2 million views in the first 2 weeks. So like we were able to test all different formats and concepts and delivery of the message to see what like worked for our audience.
That is very, very interesting. I love the formatting, right? Making it kind of unique, trying to find a way to kind of tell it in a different way. When it gets ramped up to that level, like did it go from an experiment to there being pressure on the results, specifically in that welding channel, in that welding growth? Like, did it stop being fun, easy to do because there was now stakes?
Yeah, so like in the very beginning, like growing up, like I made like skateboard and snowboard videos and all that. So like video was always kind of like a hobby, which is kind of why like, I was probably like 19 years old when I pitched hey, let me do YouTube instead. So like it was kind of this fun thing. But then like at a certain point, like we got sponsors and we had to put out a certain amount of videos per month, and like we based our like price increases on the amount of video, the amount of like views and engagement and the people that saw the entire video and like retention and all that kind of stuff. So like in order to justify those pay increases, we had to showcase that like yeah, you're because the way we monetize those videos, obviously we had like the YouTube AdSense, but that was a very small portion of the income. Most of what we were doing was like old school product placement. So like in a lot of YouTube content, you'll see like at the beginning there'll be like a like built-in ad. It's like, hey, raid Shadow Legends or whatever, like something like that. Um, we did very little of that. Like
Okay.
every now and then, like some big company would reach out to us because like we were their perfect target demographic. Like we'd get a lot of like Dollar Shave Club would hit us up, Manscaped would hit us up, like anyone who had like a predominantly like male 20 to 40 age range like demographic, they'd hit us up a lot. But like the main revenue stream that we had was these ongoing partnerships with welding manufacturers of power sources and PPE and filler, whatever. And it wouldn't be those typical YouTube sponsorships that we think of, but it's like, hey, we're going to pay you $100,000 a year. You're going to use our product in X amount of videos where let's say we're teaching people how to weld aluminum. You're going to use a green machine while you teach people how to weld aluminum. Um, so like those were the type of sponsorships that we did. And like we would have your typical like, QBR monthly reviews, quarterly reviews. And the things that we always reported on were, all right, for every piece of content that your brand showed up in, like here's how many views it got, here's how many people saw where your actual content or your piece of equipment was being promoted. Here's how many comments where people asked about the equipment that was in the video. So yeah, there was a lot of pressure to continuously create content that met a certain threshold.
Interesting. Okay, so that brings all kinds of questions. So were y'all seeking out these sponsorships, or had y'all just gotten to the place to where people were seeking y'all out and like just kind of like doing inbound to you guys, like, hey, we would love to sponsor a show? Was it proactive, or did you guys just kind of hit a critical mass and people started reaching out to y'all?
It was both.
Interesting. Okay.
So a lot of times, so typically like we would reach out to companies that either one, we just wanted their equipment, like because we wanted to use it for like long term, like in every video, like good equipment. We wanted to use it in videos. And hey, by the way, like we can show 9 million people a month your equipment, like pay us to put it in here. So that was one route. And what's super interesting is people kind of because I also did like the sales outreach for the channel for
Interesting.
partnerships.
Okay.
And the most effective way that I could for me to get in front of the right people, and I'm gonna say like 90% of our sponsorships were closed this way, is through Instagram DMs.
Really?
Because the typically the person that runs the Instagram account, um, if they're not the one that like typically they're not the one that holds the budget for like influencer marketing and stuff, but they report up into that person. And we were arguably the biggest influencer in that space. So when we would reach out to them, they would shoot it right up the chain.
That is interesting. Was it
But yeah, Instagram DMs was like the channel for us.
so?
But that being said, that was outreach. But there was other ways that we got sponsorships too. Typically, like we did very little one-off sponsorship deals. Like going back to before, like if you said like, "Hey, I'll give you," and we got these right pretty regularly. It's like, "Hey, I'll give you $5,000. I'll send you like an influencer package, and you shoot like a 90-second commercial at the front, you got to say these things, and then you pay you. So like we did very little of those. Um, but when we did do those, is a lot of times because we were an educational channel, but we also did projects. When when we needed certain equipment for projects, typically like we had very aspirational goals with these projects, and the equipment was very large from like a footprint standpoint and very expensive. Like we had a CNC plasma table which took up probably it was like 20 by 20 feet. So like it was a massive thing. Um, and in those cases, it's a $40,000 piece of equipment. In that case, to be like, hey, send us the equipment for free. Like we'll use the equipment, we'll showcase the equipment, we'll call you out anytime we use it. Things like that. It wouldn't be a monetary thing, but it would be like you've got capital equipment that we need to do this thing that we want to do. So send it to us, keep it here. In some cases, like even with that one, like we would allow their salespeople to come in, their local salespeople to come into our office, and we would do demos for them. So like there was different things like that. But anything that we did ideally was for long term. Like,
Interesting. Did you, okay, I so many questions from that little tangent. Did you ever have any of these brands or sponsors like want to have a say in the creative process
all the time.
all the time?
And this is the beauty of, so two things. This is why we only did long, not only, but like 99% of the time we pushed long-term partnerships versus like one time, hey, we're coming out with a new product, like you can use it, show it to your audience. We try to do long-term partnerships. Um, but this is also the beauty of having a very large following, because if a sponsor comes on, and it there was one, I'm not going to name names, but there was one sponsor that literally gave us a spreadsheet of all of their and they probably had like 1,000 SKUs on this spreadsheet. Here's all of the products that we have. And it was like a filler wire company. So like basically like the metal you use to weld to like two pieces of metal. So there's all these different types of filler for different applications, right? So they had, let's say, like 1,000 SKUs on this thing, and it was like, this one's for this application, this one's for this application, this one's for this application. Here's our scheduled campaigns over the next 2 quarters. We want you to create like a video with this one on this application this week, and we're like, uh-uh. That's, that's not how we work. Because how we work is, and this is the reason that we were so successful, is and this is how I actually approached that conversation was, okay, listen, um, we've already created some videos on like these applications, so like we're not going to do that right away again. But for these other things, like we always had a 30-day content calendar of what we planned on filming week to week. And I would say like, all right, here's what we're going to put this on the content calendar. Like we'll spread it out so it's not like all about you guys, but like we'll do these applications. But the reason we were so successful is because the content calendar that we created on like the first of the month was very different every single month than the content that was actually distributed in that given month, because the content calendar was essentially like our plan B. And then anytime somebody in the audience would ask for something specific, that we had like the materials and the timeline and everything we needed in-house to create for that person, it automatically went up to the top of the content calendar. So like 95% of the content that we created, and again, as you build your audience, like that percentage goes up because you get more people asking questions. But at the end, it was like 95% of the content, maybe 90% of the content was direct, like response to someone who asked something. I would say about 5% of it was just like projects that me and or like the host of the show just like thought was cool and we wanted to do. And then the other 5 would be like what was originally left on that content calendar that like we could slot in. So
Man, so I mean, first of all, I love the forward-facing plan that you can share with potential sponsors, right? So that way they can kind of see it. Did you ever have anyone like pissed off that the content that was actually being released was not the content that was on the calendar? Did you ever get that like that kind of pushback?
the only time that ever happened was if like and we tried to like we tried if this was the case we did our very best to slot it in like the appropriate time. But like in some cases I said like we wanted to work with our partners long term. While in doing long term partnerships, specifically with like um, manufacturers that are coming out with like a very new product. Like it's totally, it's not like V3 of something they've already had, but like it's something net new, like a machine or something. They typically do like a very big marketing push, like on all channels with everyone they work with. And they, with us as a long form YouTube channel, they typically want us to do like an unboxing, go through the machine, show you all of its features and functionality. In those cases, if someone came out with like a new product and we were slow to get that video out, some people typically they'd be like, guys, like we we're like a sponsor like this, but we did our best to get those out on time. So it
Interesting.
didn't happen often, but once or twice.
So leaving that, so that's when you made the jump over to B2B SaaS?
Yeah. So I made the jump. I want to say it was like January 2021, I think.
Okay. And how, this is like maybe a weird question to ask. How, like, what are the biggest differences with trying to do content in B2B SaaS versus trying to do content in like, a quote unquote unsexy old school business lane?
I don't think it's necessarily the industry difference. I think the main difference for me was when I was working as an influencer and people were paying us for eyeballs on content. Um, a lot of times, like we would produce content and they'd come to me and be like, "Hey, like, how do we how do we know what we're getting from this?" And not to be like rude, but like typically my response would be like some sort of variation of like my job as the influencer is to get eyeballs on your machine. Your job is to figure out how to measure and do what you want with that. So that I mean, to put it bluntly, that was like the message. When I came over to B2B SaaS, now I was the one like, okay, how do I attribute and figure out like what we're actually getting from these things and distribute dollars and that sort of thing. So to me, that was the biggest change is like I shifted to my customer in a sense.
Interesting. Okay. Um, so I'm going to kind of mix it up a little bit because I've been thinking of the questions that I have for you specifically. So what do you do now when you get writer's block or when you're struggling to come up with something to make? How do you handle that?
Um,
And it's totally valid to say that you don't really run into it anymore. If
no,
you've
I do all the time. No, I think everyone's gonna run into that. I don't think that's something you ever really like get over.
Okay,
Um,
that's helpful to know.
yeah, like me and Obed go through this a little bit in the easy mode framework in the ideation stage of that. So like I'll just say you can go check that out if you want like an actual list of like best things to try to do. But as far as writer's block goes and like how to be creative on demand, first off, like there's never going to be like a silver bullet that can just be like, hey, like do these things and you're gonna come up with an idea. So I would say like what I typically find helpful if I'm like having writer's block or can't come up with a concept of a show or something like that is I've got like a small network of people that I trust their ideas. Like I know that if I go to them, we can kind of like collaborate and just like, hey, I've got kind of do what we're doing right now, but not recorded as a podcast. It's like, hey, like I've got some ideas. I know what I need to accomplish, but I can't really think of like a format on how to do it. Here's like the loose stuff that is floating around in my head, but it doesn't really connect. Like I need to figure out like how it works. And collaborating with other people in like a I really like doing this with external people because I think collaborating with external people, they're not their mind isn't embedded in like the goals of the company and like what you need to get done and stuff. So like the ideas are typically a little more creative and outside the box. I would say the second thing, and this, I mean, this may work for some people, it may not, but it worked for me. Um, Typically, like if I just like can't think of something, going for a run, always just like I'll be like a mile or two into a run and like just like random thoughts pop into my head. I don't listen to music. Well, I listen to music, but I don't listen to music that I would listen to like in the car. It's not like music I can sing along to. Like I'll listen to music that's kind of just like vibey running beats, I guess. So like I'm not like thinking about like lyrics. And a lot of times thoughts will pop into my head. I'll stop for 2 minutes, throw it in the notes app, and then just keep going. So those two things typically are what work for me.
How long have you been a runner?
I started during the pandemic.
Really?
So
So this is fascinating because I don't meet a whole lot of people who come to running like as an adult, right? And so
yeah, I mean, I played sports as a kid. Like I played lacrosse as a kid, so like there was a lot of running in that, but like never like cross country or anything like that. And then I stopped. I don't think I ran for probably, I don't know, 2004 to like 2020.
yeah.
So like I was out of it for a long time. And then yeah, like when the pandemic hit, I was just at home, and at the time I lived in Florida, and it was beautiful outside, and I was like, you know what, like
Hmm.
let's go.
Interesting. This is a wild tangent because I love hobbies that you can find like, recharge and, meditation and improvements out of. Any tips for like people who want to try to get into running as an adult?
I've got one tip.
Oh,
This
let's
this
go.
helped me this helped me a lot, and this is going to be a product pitch, but I have no association with it, so I have no problem. Um, I found myself getting super bored while running, and like I would stop not because like I was like dead tired or out of breath, or I was just like, ugh, like I'm bored, I'm going home. So like I would run like a mile and be like, I'm done, like I don't want this anymore. I downloaded an app called the Nike Run Club app, and I know there's other running apps out there, but and I don't know if they all do this or not, but they have like a every run. So like I was doing the half marathon training like when I first started, and they have like a coach that literally coaches you as you go. So like I would have my music in the background, and then I would have this app running. So like you're running, and then he would pop in like every like 2 minutes and like focus on this, focus on that, do this, do that. There would be like speed runs where it's like, all right, you're gonna run like 8 out of 10 for the next 30 seconds, and then you're gonna go back. And so like it kept you engaged, which for me was the biggest difficulty because I would just get bored.
Mhm.
So
Fascinating because like I loathe running, right? I was in the military and like just ruined it for me. Like I hate the whole thing. So, but part of it comes from like I'm just like counting steps and then I'm like tired of counting and then I don't know what else to do. That's very, very interesting. Okay, so going back to the SaaS stuff, right? When you're dealing with all these smart people, right? You're dealing with people who, very, very smart, and they've all got big goals, can you talk about the pressure that comes with that from like a content creation standpoint, right? Because, I love what you said a second ago about, getting output from people that aren't inside of the organization because they're more creative and they're less focused on the business goals. But like, what happens when you're when you're surrounded by people who are only focused on business goals because there's VC money and investors and everyone wants to get paid back. Like, how, like, did you have to fight to be heard, or do you have to fight to be like test certain ideas, or to try to be unique or different? Like, where do those arguments come up when it's like funded and, you know, everyone's got big goals?
Yeah. So a couple things on this. So everyone asks me this, like, how do you, not in that context, but what I get a lot is, because like what I do is typically like hard to pitch at a company, right? Like, hey, how do I pitch? Like, I want to create like an episodic series, you know, like not that's a hard pitch at most companies. So people ask me this a lot. Um, and I've been lucky enough in my career that I've built a personal brand that basically does the pitching for me. So typically when I go into a company, that's why they're bringing me in versus like me coming in as a traditional content marketer like I was back in the day trying to pitch myself to, you know, let me build a YouTube channel. Like when I come into a company, they usually bring me in for a specific reason, and it's because of the content that I'm known for. That being said, so I would say like whatever your skill set is, like building a personal brand around that skill set that people know you for that thing. When you go into any company, you're not going to have to sell that thing because that's most likely why they brought you in. So that's one bonus of building a personal brand. Um, but the other thing is for people that haven't done that, they're already in a company and like they want to go this route, is I would say like you can try to see if you can carve out like a small budget to run like a show or a podcast or whatever. Um, Typically, in my experience, and this isn't everyone's experience, but in my experience, when you try to do that, um, one, you have to be really, really good at internal marketing, because if you're not good at internal marketing and showing everybody like the leading indicators that like success is on its way, like people are engaging, people are telling you how much they love the show, like stuff that does not equal dollars and cents, but it's a leading indicator that you're going in the right direction. You have to be super good at that. Um, but if you can't get that budget carved out to create something, and or time or approval, whatever, like let's face it, like you can do a podcast very low budget.
Yeah.
So you don't necessarily.
Here is one.
But the other thing I would say, and this is what I did when I came into B2B SaaS, is like when I worked at Refine Labs, my job was to basically, they were doing very well at podcasting, they were doing very well at LinkedIn, and my goal was to come in and like expand the channels. I did not like get approval to make skits or get approval to do entertaining content. Like I just did it on my personal brand, and then everyone, like, we were very into self-report attribution there. So like when people started seeing like Todd Clouser's TikToks or this funny video that I saw on LinkedIn, that's when like I proved it through my own brand, which like my own brand's mine. Like I can do whatever I want with my own brand. Like it's working for me. Like we should probably start to invest in this from a company standpoint. So like that's how I would recommend most people do it. Like if you have the confidence to try it yourself and you think you can be successful, prove the concept like personally.
Interesting.
And then yeah.
That's really, really interesting. When we're thinking about marketing in the B2B space, right? There's people who talk about build a personal brand, tell a story, you know, create a media company, document, you know, all these other things. Like, what do you think if for someone who's like starting today, right? They're a seller, they're a marketer, they're launching their own thing. What do you think the best way is to start to kind of flesh that out so that way you're starting from a place of, I guess, like, I guess, a clearly defined starting point. Like, how do people get up to speed? Like, where would you point someone if they were brand new to start figuring stuff out?
I I heard Colin Fleming last week at Golden Hour, who is the executive VP of global marketing at Salesforce. He was the mind behind Salesforce Plus, which was like the first, B2B streaming platform. I heard him say last Wednesday something that like never really um, hit me until he said it, but like I think it's a brilliant way to start because the way I've always started is it's kind of difficult to start. Like we have to think of shows, we have to like execute on those shows, distribute those shows. But he said something that was like a much easier path to success and like getting in there, getting started, which was basically just like taking something that your company is already executing at really, really well, and then using like this owned media strategy to make it go further. So, like, as an example, Salesforce is an events first company. Everyone knows Dreamforce. They have a bunch of different like ancillary events. What they do, the whole like starting point for them to create Salesforce Plus was they wanted that event content to go further versus just like you had to be there to see it and then like we just dump it all on like a resources page or something. So like that's how they started. That's how they started getting people there. And then once this site had all of this traffic, that's when they started doing like episodic series and like more highly produced stuff. So like if you have something, it doesn't have to be events, but I think events is like a perfect example of this. Like if you have something like that that you can increase the value of by creating a channel like this, um, that's a perfect way to start, and it's a very easy pitch. Like for example, like I didn't have to pitch it this way, but like let's say we had just created Golden Hour, but we didn't have like this own media strategy. I've got even if we didn't do all the content activations that we did, I would still have like, I don't know, something like 20 sessions that were just like there. Like eh, every event does like, hey, you can buy the virtual ticket for like $800. You can get the in-person ticket for like $1,500. But like the virtual ticket, we basically just gave away for free because like we're building our own media strategy of it over the course of the next year. So like taking something that you're already doing really well and just making it a way to gain subscribers and build an audience is a perfect way in.
That is, like, I love the idea because, like, it's just simple. Like, just you know, do the things you're already doing. Put a camera in front of it, right? Like, you don't necessarily have to go create the wheel. Um, so changing gears wildly, right? Because you're just coming out of this event, right? What did you learn about doing this event specifically that you take into, like, next year and the next time you do it? Any improvements that you can already see in the next repetition?
Of the event
Yeah.
itself, like the in-person event.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we first of all, there was a ton, like all the feedback has been amazing. There was this almost sounds like just like nitpicky because like uh most of the feedback was good, but like there was a couple issues with like the venue. So like we had 300 people like going up and down between four elevators, which was for meals, which was that caused some like time delays on things. Um, I think I don't even know if I would change this, but like we packed so much content into a single day. As someone who threw the event, like who was part of the team like hosting the event, like I basically missed it all. Like I was just like running around doing stuff. Like I wish there was a way, and I don't even know that this is something I can change, but like I wish there was a way that like I could be more active with the people there. But that's just the nature of this is the first like event that I've been like an actual like part of like planning and hosting. I've always just been like, the marketer that shows up and like learns and has a good time and, goes out and meets people. But so I wish I could do that more, but I would say the amount of content, and we're probably gonna write something or create a video or something that we have a documentary coming out, but like something quicker that like just takes people through like how we thought about content. Because I don't know if you saw this or not. I literally just put this out today. Um, we created 120 pieces of content in a single day, and not and I know when people say that it's very like Gary V, right? But like those were like individual episodes of a series, or and I also include like the sessions and stuff in there, which probably makes up for like I don't know, like 30 or 40 of those. But like, even when you take out sessions completely, we probably still created 90 pieces of like episodic content at the show, where we had content activations happening, where people could include themselves in like the series that we were creating on the spot. Every time someone came off the desk or the stage, like we had very specific, it was basically like short form podcast, like, hey, before you like unmic and walk away, like sit right here, we've got like 5 questions for you, knock these out. So like we've got episodes of a show we're going to call Clipped that probably has like, I don't know, if most B2B marketers could create like their like list of like B2B marketers that they would like love to meet in person, like the best B2B marketers in the industry, like that's basically like the guest list of this show. Like it's absolutely insane. So pretty excited about that one. But like
So
I,
because I'm curious, right? You know, you're talking about this massive amount of content. Was it kind of like speed dating as far as like trying to come up with ideas, or was everything already like formatted and formulated? Like how much was like off the
everything
cuff?
was done everything was done in advance.
Whoa.
So like when it comes to questions and topics and all of that, like everything was thought about in advance. So like in the show that I just mentioned to you, like when they came off the stage, everybody had 5 questions. We had so this is a fun fact. We had one camera operator at the show for every 20 people that were there. So we had they would come off the stage, there'd be a camera operator, so it's all gonna look really good. We had a camera operator, we had someone on our team standing behind the camera operator that had the 5 questions for the individual person coming off the stage. So like they would just ask them the questions, we're gonna cut them out. It's just the answers of the person. So like that was all formulated. We had the best way I can describe it is 2 booths that were basically content booths, where like one was Tim Davidson. We basically made like a fruit stand for him, and he had 6 topics that he recorded in between sessions, like just him and the camera, that were like 5 to 8 minutes. And then anytime like the sessions let out, he was there just kind of like bringing people in, cutting fruit with them. We had the same thing with Obed on the other side. He was playing PlayStation with people, like talking about content. We had a booth where you could go in and we had like prompts and you could create content right there on the spot. And then um, Vimeo has like a text-based editor tool, and like they were there. They sponsored this particular content activation. They were there editing the content like in real time as you recorded it. So like you basically stood there for like 5 minutes. They sent you the thing and you could post it in real time. So like there was a ton, and that doesn't even include like the sessions and stuff. So there was a ton of content that we were creating.
So you've used this label a couple of times just in this conversation. Like, what exactly is a content activation? Like, how do you?
So we pitched this event as like, hey, it's kind of like the anti B2B conference. Like we didn't we didn't want it to be like every other marketing conference. I don't think marketing really needs that. So we still had sponsors because, like, obviously we had to pay for the event, but we did not. There were no badge scans, and there were no sponsor booths. So, like, for instance, Vimeo host or sponsored what we called the Golden Hour Studio, the one where they were live editing. Um, Basically, where a typical like sponsored booth would be like, hey, come look at our product. Like, here's a badge scan. Like, we'll talk to you later. Blah blah blah. What they got with their sponsorship is what we call content activation. So there was a giant TV in the room. They had an editor in the room, set them up with like the camera set up, and they could like record these. Anyone could come in and record these prompts, and then what they were seeing from like a branded sponsored standpoint was the product in action. The editor was using the product, but they got content from it. So like it wasn't like, hey, come in and demo the thing. Like any sponsored content activation um, was basically our answer for the future of booths. So like you want to be involved with that sponsor's booth because you get something out of it that's not just swag.
Interesting, right? So were you guys, it sounds like you guys were pretty specific in inviting people who like could aid in the content creation process in some way, shape, or form, so that way they get to have an experience as opposed to just like a really bad event conversation.
Yeah, there was a lot. There was one that I really wanted to do, but we ended up not being able to do it. It was actually going to be the day before the event. I'm not going to give the full context of the show because I still want to do it. I think we're going to do it at something at another spot. So I don't want to give too much away. But at the core of like the idea is I was going to pick people up at the airport. So like uh, rent like an Escalade or some nice, black car or whatever, and then pick up speakers and attendees at the airport the day before the event. And we were going to try to we were in talks with Uber and Lyft to sponsor the event or sponsor the show. And basically what the idea was is like, hey, hit me up. I'm gonna, depending on like when you land, I'm going to pick up 8 people on the Tuesday before the show, and we're going to record this piece of content as I bring you back to the hotel. And I was basically going to be like their host slash Uber driver. So it's still going to happen. So I don't want to give away what actually happens in the car. So, but yeah. So again, like rather than being like, hey, Uber, like sponsor our B2B marketing event, you can have a booth and talk about Uber business and all that. Like we're creating content around what the company actually
The actual
does.
experience of it.
So like we showcase the product, same thing with the Vimeo, like showcase the product, but in a way that doesn't feel like you're being pitched, but you still understand what it does.
I
And you
love
get
that.
content at the end of the day.
That's like what a unique way of like making the event different, trying to bring in some new kind of like sponsorship, because like, you know who you can go to for like event sponsorship, like once you've been in the space for a while, like, who typically funds this stuff. Right. And
Yeah.
I just came from an event and they were trying to do it differently as well. So like they weren't allowing any of the vendors to like get up and talk. Right. And like some people were opting out of that because it's like, well, if I can't talk, I'm not going to do it, so doing it differently brings potentially new people to the crowd, which I find interesting. Um, okay. So I have some more rapid fires for you, right? If it's okay. When,
Good.
when you're thinking about, starting out, right? Like, let's say you get hired for like a marketing role, right? And it's in B2B SaaS shit, just to keep it close and tight. What do you think that first, 30 days should look like? Yeah, I'm not going to add on to the question there. Like what do you think a great 30-day for like a brand new marketer in a brand new role should be?
Um, Typically what I like to do, this is from a content marketer standpoint. Um, I've made this mistake in the past. Like ideally, like if you're going into a company that's, later stage and you have more time and like my 30 days would be like getting very in tune with the product, talk to customers, see like what all like understand like the pain points of the customers, what they want, what the product does, like all of that stuff. The reality of the situation, if you're working for like an early stage startup, is like you might have like maybe a week to do that. Like we need to start like actually like doing shipping things quickly. So I would say like do that in the background. You can't spend all your day doing that, but start doing that type of stuff in the background. I always start with a content audit. So like the way I audit things are a little bit differently than the way I know most companies audit things. So I go in and I typically anyone who's posting on LinkedIn or social media, I'll go and I'll look at like typically this is like CEO, leadership, CMO, that type of thing. Go see like what they're actually talking about. I'll start bucketizing that. I'll do the same thing for like blogs, newsletters, any recurring content that's happening. I start bucketizing all of those things. And then from all of that, I start creating what we call an easy mode, like the realm of relevancy, which for early stage startups, a lot of them don't have like a true strategic narrative. So that's kind of what I build that into. If the company already does have a strategic narrative built out, then it's just like a matter of aligning the things that everyone's talking about. Like, does that actually align with the mission of the company, or is that like completely different? I think um, Pape Laya is a really good example of like his content that he puts out on LinkedIn. Like, yeah, I don't think I've ever seen a piece of content from him that is not like a deep dive on messaging. Like he is dialed in. Like, so, but a lot of people aren't that I guess the word I'm looking for is like regimented in like the topics they talk about. A lot of people are like at all levels. It's like, okay, what do I talk about today? And sometimes it has no relevance to like what the company actually needs them to be talking about. So I like to try to build that out so everyone can kind of speak from the same voice.
Interesting. Okay. Um, what are you what are you seeing that you're excited about as far as content creation, B2B marketing? Like, are you seeing anything, trends, tech, different ideas that is like really getting you like excited?
Yeah, I think something that's really getting me excited is a lot of people are starting to accept the fact that like we can push the boundaries a little bit with content. Like it's funny, a year or two ago, probably like a year and a half, 2 years ago, like when I first started doing entertaining content, um, everybody would push back on me like, yeah, this is funny or this is cool. Like I watched it, you got a lot of views, a lot of great vanity metrics, but like that doesn't really like that didn't do anything other than like you got 1,000 likes or something. What I'm excited to see is that mindset shift happening. Now, that being said, I think the way that a lot of people are creating content in that entertaining way is true to what like people were kind of pushing on me for. So I think I'm excited that people are testing the boundaries. What I think needs to happen is that while we're testing the boundaries, we need to be very cognizant that we're aligning that content to actual like goals of the business, whether that's spreading our narrative or talking about a product or feature in like an entertaining way. Like we need to figure out like we're not going for likes for the sake of likes.
Okay, I like that. what's your pet peeve, right? When you're scrolling on LinkedIn, you're scrolling on social, right? You're scrolling in a dark web community, if you will, right? What do you see that just makes you roll your eyes from like a content marketing perspective, like mantras or outdated ideas that you don't think are helpful anymore?
Honestly, like if you would have asked me that question, like, I don't know, 2 years ago, I probably could have given you a list of like, oh, I roll my eyes every time I see someone screenshot a tweet, or like at this point, like I don't really, nothing really bothers me. I don't really care. Like I'm at a point where I recognize the fact that like not everyone's goals with their content are the same as mine. So like maybe something works for them that like if I tried to do, like it would absolutely not work. But like not everyone's goals are the same. So like honestly, like as I scroll through these channels, I can't even think of an example where I do that.
Interesting. You posted something about how you shouldn't always give value in the feed, right? Which is kind of interesting because I'm seeing a lot of people talk about like don't make them click, don't make them leave because of algo suppression, and also people want to be helped right there. So I was trying to do research on the call, so I didn't really have time to read the whole article. Like, what do you think the ratio is on that now? Like should people, just from like a business standpoint, because you said this a second ago, like we need to be able to kind of have, I guess, uh, velocity, right, towards the calls to action, towards, these other things, or else, even showing the work is going to get kind of hard to continue to kind of get people and keep people on your side. So do you have any thoughts on like what that ratio should be as far as like helping people right there versus trying to get them to like take an action or, move closer in our direction?
Yeah, I think I can share what's worked for me with the um, side note that it really depends on again what the goals of your content are. The whole thing that prompted this was I forget why, but something prompted me to think back to like my YouTube days within like the past couple weeks. And I've been pushing this narrative for probably 2 years at this point too, that like, hey, even as recently as like I don't know 6 7 months ago, like one of the things I would have told you had you asked me that previous question 6 or 7 months ago that makes me roll my eyes is like when people say, here's 10 things to help you do X, and then they give you like eight for the last two, like look at my newsletter. That used to drive me insane. But I realized like, hey, that's the exact same thing I used to do on YouTube, and it worked phenomenally. Now I didn't it wasn't the exact same, but like it had I done in the past what everyone pitches in B2B what to do now, provide all the value in the feed, like don't make them go anywhere else to get it, I never would have been able to create like a sustainable YouTube channel from a revenue standpoint, because if I did that, all the content that was created on YouTube would then be on Instagram. I could grow my Instagram following 10 times faster than my long form YouTube channel had I done that strategy, most likely. If I just clipped up a long form YouTube video and put it on Instagram as 10 different clips, I could have had I had 120,000 followers on Instagram. I probably could add 500,000. But my goal was not Instagram. My goal was not in it was Instagram viewership, but the main point of my Instagram following was to help me monetize YouTube because and I put this in the longer form version of the article. I ran out of characters on the LinkedIn post. But the reason that I didn't put all of that into Instagram is because whether it's right or not, like we could argue that as a different topic, all my sponsors cared about was those long form eyeballs on the YouTube content. I tried to do this so many times, increase uh, increase the price of like sponsorship packages based on TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram like viewership. Nobody cared. It was all about long form YouTube. So Had I put all of that YouTube content on Instagram, there's no reason for them to go to YouTube. And then if there's no reason for them to go to YouTube, I can't increase my prices. I can't pull on new sponsors. Like I can't continue to grow my channel at a way faster clip, because when I did put out those, here are 5 things, look at the other 4 on YouTube type of content, I could see the analytics spike every single time I did it. Now I didn't do it all the time. Like we still did like a piece of 0-click content like every week. We put behind the scenes on there every week. Like, and all of those things had we had different reasons to do that. Like, yes, we wanted to provide value in the feed. Like we didn't want to just be like, hey, go over this other channel like all the time, because then people stopped following us on Instagram. We put behind the scenes and bloopers and stuff on there because like we're humanizing the content. We're building closer relationships. Like people, whether you realize this or not, but like if most people actually think about this from a viewership standpoint, if you think about your favorite creator, you have like this faux relationship with them. Like they have no idea who you are.
None whatsoever.
But like you feel like you have this connection to them. So like that's built by doing like these relationship building pieces of content, like bloopers, behind the scenes, like talk to the audience, those sorts of things. So like there was purpose behind everything that we did. But if we just dumped all the stuff on Instagram, like we would not be able to monetize YouTube. So like
you got to be, I guess, like thoughtful of the home base is.
Yeah, you have to think the purpose or the objective of every piece of content is different. And the problem that people run into is like, I blame like, the Gary V's of the world that have conditioned us to think like it's all about consistency and, the number of posts we put out, which like there's merit in that. Like you do have to be consistent when you do these things. But people have over-indexed on like, hey, I need to be in front of people all the time, but they have no idea what the actual piece of content, like what the purpose behind it is. Like, what am I trying to achieve with this thing other than just being in your face so you remember who I am? So,
man, that's a nugget for me, right? Because like I sometimes start to get into the mode of like, I better get something out there. I better get something out there. And then, sometimes I have enough awareness and I'm in the right gear and I can be like, I don't have anything to say. Shut up, close the app, go work on work stuff. Don't get bogged down in like trying to play that role and everything. Okay. So as someone who's had a massive channel, right? Is it hard to not compare current videos to that? Because I love the line of like, don't compare your step 1 to someone else's step 100, right? But you've already done step 100, right? So is it harder for you to like not focus on vanity metrics and not really kind of be disappointed because you've had such a significant high watermark?
No, because I think this kind of came in that learning moment that we talked about earlier, going from like the influencer to like the customer of the influencer in my case. Like I can see where like we need a lot of viewership on content and like certain like brand content and things like that, like the number of views matter. But on the other hand, like I've seen firsthand that I can create something that, it gets, I'm just making this number up, but it gets 100 views and, 10 people reach out to me about it. Like I think in B2B SaaS, we're not selling sponsorship unless you're like a true media company. We're not selling sponsorships to content. So it's not all about the reach necessarily, but it's how effective it is to the people that actually see it. So if we can make the content, if we can plan out like the goals of what we're trying to achieve with the content and then measure how effective we are in achieving those goals through that specific series or campaign or whatever, it's easier not to like compare vanity metrics. And I'm not saying views and likes and engagement is vanity metrics either. Like to some extent, if you're doing it for the wrong reasons, yes, but like if your goal is to increase brand awareness and those likes and engagement and everything is coming from the right group of people, then like I wouldn't call that vanity metrics. I think the disconnect is when there's nothing to follow that up. And I've seen this so many times. Audience Plus, we're super early stage companies, so like we're trying to combat this like as we do these massive brand things with like Golden Hour, where people know the brand but they don't know the product, and like that's a big problem. So um, eyeballs are great as long as you can connect that back to your business objectives.
So being someone who's been in the space for a while and done some big things, do you ever feel how do I phrase this question? Are you ever kind of brought in on the basis of your past success and you kind of have to like slow it down and be like, whoa, right? Like we need to kind of really make sure that like qualifying, if we're going to put it in like a sales term, like qualifying to Fed expectations, right? Because, you're a known name, right? Especially in the B2B, SaaS space. So do you ever have anyone like looking at you as a silver bullet, I guess, when they're reaching out to hire you?
Um, More on a not recently. I think I've done I think a pretty good job of like setting expectations before I've come into places. But and this is funny because I haven't talked about this in like 2 years, but I literally just talked about it like 5 minutes before we hopped on this conversation. When I first came into B2B SaaS, um, a lot of people wanted like YouTube consulting. And we had all heard, like everyone's heard the term like, creating content is a long-term like play. You're not going to create instant results. But in the world of B2B, um, long-term on social media is like 3 to 6 months. Like if I start like going hardcore on LinkedIn today and do it really well and spend time there and like really do my best, like I can start to see early signs of results within 3 to 6 months. On YouTube, I tell people like you can throw that out the window right now. Like I'm talking long term here. The the only way that you should invest in YouTube, and this was, to be fair, this was before shorts. So like shorts can probably rein in this timeline a little bit, although I would argue not that much. If you really want to be successful on YouTube, like you have to be willing to do it for 2 years without seeing any results. And
Whoa.
when I tell people that, they're like, "What?" Like, and I turn and like I look back at them and I'm like, this is why no B2B company is successful on YouTube. Like it took me 5 years to get to 50,000 subscribers, which was, even at 5 years, we were not even breaking even on the content that we were creating. So like 5 years in, we weren't even breaking even. And like I tell people that, and they're like, how did you get buy-in to keep going? And I'm like, because when I started, I was getting paid $25,000 a year, and when I finished, not when I finished, but like when we hit that point, I was getting paid like 45. So like I was dirt cheap. That's how we were able to keep going. Um, so like you have to recognize, like when I tell people that, they're like, okay, yeah, I don't want to do YouTube. And that's why there's very, very few good B2B YouTube channels. I think the only two I know off the top of my head that are successful is HubSpot and Ahrefs. Those are the only two that I know of that have, and I don't, when I say successful, that's just from a third party. Like I can see that they have like good viewership. I don't know what that equates to, but yeah.
Interesting. So last question, then I'll let you go. Super, man, so glad we got to do this. I've been having these questions for a while. Who do you like? Who do you follow? Who are you excited like when you see them in the feed, when the ding goes off? Like who are you willing to put everything down for and be like, oh, I need to go check this out? Do you have anybody right now?
Um, not to be like rude. There are a lot of people that I like their content in B2B. There's a lot of people that like, I stop to read their stuff like when I see their profile picture. There is nobody in B2B that I would say is like my inspiration. Um, I take all my inspiration from like YouTube creators, and not like the Mr. Beast of the world, but like channels that are really doing things differently that like a lot of people may not even know, but like, and completely outside of like, these are just like, hobby channels. So like there's a guy named Sam the Cooking Guy who I think he does an incredible, it's a cooking show. He does an incredible job at not just like creating these recipes and filming it well, but like injecting his own personality. They're not overproduced, like they're not like in these crazy kitchens where there's like hidden doors in the refrigerator and stuff. Like it's not like that. He just does a really good job of like injecting his own personality so that like nobody else can touch him, at least in my head, on that front. So take a lot of inspiration from him. Um, I think Peter McKinnon's probably a old reference at this point. I don't really watch him that much anymore, but like when I was in YouTube, like he was my go-to. Like I watched him all the time. Um, and then just like there's like random channels. Like I watch like Dude Perfect with my son, and like they do like crazy stuff. But like when you watch these things with like intention, you can start to see like what keeps your attention, what does, even though like from a content perspective, like it has no relevance, but like from a how they keep my attention perspective, it absolutely does. And it's not always like these big, wild, and crazy things. Like Sam the Cooking Guy is a perfect example of like he uses his personality to keep you engaged. So
Okay, so I was gonna let you go, but I got to ask this one last question, right? Because everyone kind of talks about how stale B2B marketing is, and it's way too professional and everything. And you're talking about this guy who's good at injecting his personality into it. And if this is in the easy mode framework, then we can just point people to there. But how do you get people past that professional cliff, so that way it's like really their personality, really them? They're not trying to be like, back in 1816 and like holding the lapel and like it's like a Civil War photo and all this other stuff. Like how do you get people past that?
um, it's very difficult. Um, I could give you like the standard answer of like build it into the culture that people can be themselves, and but like that's not really the answer. For me, the best thing that has worked is whether it's you as like the content producer or if there's someone else on the team that can do this, is you get two people together that work very well together. They could be friends on the team. They could pull in someone externally who they're friends with. Uh, that pulls that pulls personality out of people. Is if I am creating something with if I'm creating content with someone that like I'm sending memes to in like the Slack DMs, like one on one, or like I'm sending Instagram reels at night to that. But like that type of relationship with someone internally, you put those two people together, and if you can actually, this isn't going to be everybody, but if you can become that person as the content producer, then you can inject yourself into it, and it becomes way easier because you can pull yourself out of content. You can kind of throw yourself in when you need to. And that's the easiest way to 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 bring out people's personality. I don't think it's something that you can necessarily like train into people, because like staring at a camera, like it's very hard to be like personable. But like me and you talking back and forth, like grew up in the neighborhood together, or like we've been on the same team for the past 3 years. Like in that case, it's way easier to just be like personable with someone else. Um, and that's worked really well for me. Like, I think there's some examples out there. Like even this goes all the way back to my weld.com YouTube days, was the industry knew me, but they didn't know me because I would always troll my host on camera from behind the camera. So for like a 10-year period, for an audience of 9 million viewers a month, I was just known as camera guy. And I had like we had like camera guy stickers that where you couldn't see my face, it was just the back of my head. When we would go to trade shows and stuff, like people would obviously be taking pictures of like themselves with the subject matter expert, and I'd always have my camera, so I'd be in the back of the picture like looking the other way so no one could see my face, like, but like I would inject myself because I was friends with the subject matter expert on like a personal level, like we were friends. I would inject myself into that to get him more like, like loose and joking and stuff like that. So,
That is interesting. Huh. Okay.
yeah.
Man, Todd, thank you so much for coming and hanging out and doing this interview. I really appreciate it. Where would you like to send people if they want to learn more about what you're doing, or if they want to come check out, or maybe hire you, or whatever that looks like? Where should they come find you?
Yeah, go to audienceplus.com/discover. You can see all the content that we're creating. We just released a really, really good looking version of Easy Mode where we rented out an arcade and
Oh,
it's
cool.
edited really cool. So, yeah,
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
yeah, absolutely.